Hey everybody! Today on the Tales from Behind the DM screen, I'm going to tell you why it's okay for all of your orcs to be evil. Okay, go lay down. Go lay down. Go. Alright, so that was Ivan. That's my husky, and now he's looking at me because I'm not giving him scratches anymore. But he's not going to get any more because I got to talk right now. Alright, so this is going to be a kind of a long video, and I do apologize. You might want to hit the old 1.5 speed or whatever to get through it all, or you can just listen to it in the background and you can listen to what I have to say. But I'm kind of weighing in here long after the fact, but it seems to me that a lot of the D&D video log type channels that I follow, there's a lot of talk recently about how, and I did a video with this, the last one I just did, about why D&D is kind of killing the past, right? Anyway, but how D&D is changing, how we are getting away from what it used to be, and it's changing into something that doesn't really represent, or I guess technically the foundation is there, right? But a lot of the foundation, we're rewriting it, and we're changing that foundation to fit more into the way D&D is being played now, and that's just, you know, you can have, that would be an even longer video. Why is D&D like that is now? Well, I mean, it has to do with the fact that it's just the passage of time. The 30 and 40-year-olds that were playing D&D in the 1970s, well, a lot of them are dead. So, you know, and as they've gotten older, and it's just like as anything else, it's like the world affects us in ways that changes our perceptions and changes the way we look at things, and changes the way that we address the way the world affects us and how we affect the world. And the things that we use and we watch and we play and everything really is affected by our environment. And the world of the 2020s is nothing like the 1970s, where I started playing D&D. I mean, you know, and that's another video entirely, which wouldn't even be on this channel because I wouldn't be talking about socioeconomic changes and things like that. But my point is that it is completely wrong for somebody who's getting into D&D in 2020 to expect it to be like, you know, 1970s D&D. And it is completely wrong for a 1970s D&D to expect everybody who's getting into the game in 2020 to play it like it was before. That being said, there's a recent push for this idea that things aren't evil. And like orcs aren't evil. You know, they aren't just a straightforward evil race of beings. There should be nuance, and there should be this. And you know, I'm going to be all over in this video, and I actually have notes that I want to make sure that I touch on so I don't forget about certain things. And that's fine. But, you know, I'm telling you right now, it's completely fine for you to have D&D and to have a race of creatures that is just evil. It is just evil for whatever reasons you can come up with. Go because they are the last of some Neanderthal race. They just don't fit in the world anymore. Go to like fantastic movies or books like the 13th Warrior. Bone Tomahawk was a recent movie that kind of touched on that theme as well. Very grisly movie, mind you. You know, might not want to watch that one if you are a little weak in the knees. But there definitely is that perception. And you can have this race of creatures that just isn't as technologically advanced, or just isn't as with it, so to speak, as the rest of the world. And when those two worlds collide and have friction, like, you can't reason with an unreasonable foe. And you know, and you can get into the, oh, well, you know, it's like, who's the right person in that situation? Well, it doesn't mean I'll put a pin on that. We'll get to that in a little bit. I believe it is perfectly reasonable and perfectly awesome for your D&D campaign to have that type of foe. And the reason for that is that I'm all for Game of Thrones-esque type of intrigue and plots, if you will. Characters like, like Jamie, who we learned to hate right away, but as the story progressed, you start seeing him as not just a person who shoves children out of windows, but as someone who is deeply conflicted with a great deal of moral ambiguity and compass in his upbringing and what have you. And then you learn to, be sympathetic to him. And I'm interested to see how the book takes his character. We all know how you may not know, but we know the series had an ending for him. I'm interested to see where the books eventually go. But my point is that those shades of gray type situations, type of characters, they have their place, and they definitely have a spot in the campaign. But your players absolutely positively need things that just need to be put down, and I'll explain why. So when I was young and I played D&D, there was when you first got the basic set, right? You got your basic set, you got the basic D&D, and I got AD. I had all kinds of different types of D&D. I had AD&D, I had basic D&D, I had tunnels and trolls. I had all kinds of stuff. But when you got that red box, the basic D&D box, you got the Caves of Chaos, or basically the Keep on the Borderlands, more well known. And after you cleaned out the caves one by one, you didn't have another adventure. And as kids, we didn't really have the ability to go and we didn't have the mentality to hey, I'm going to create my own dungeon. It was tough for us to grasp that possibility. And so the next possible thing was, let's go back to the keep and kill everybody and take everything. That was just how we progressed. And everybody talks about that. Yep, okay, we took care of that. And the Village of Hamlet is the same deal. Like we had AD&D adventure that eventually turned into the Temple of Elemental Evil, which I understand is being reprinted by Goodman Games, which is awesome. Temple of Elemental Evil was an awesome campaign. But this being said, and kind of murking the waters here, is that we as kids, we didn't have some morality compass. It was just wouldn't it be cool if we went back to the keep and killed everybody and took all the gold? Now, and it was just cool. I mean, and when my son and I play D&D, and my daughter plays this as well, my son just doesn't grasp the big moral compass of it, right? He's just think, that guy's got that gold statue, I want it, and if he doesn't want me to have it, well, I guess I have to stab him. And so he kills the evil wizard and takes the golden statue, and now he's got a golden statue, and he's happy. And I think we forget about that. I think we forget about the fact that there is something very, very satisfying about finding a cave, going into it, killing the things that are in that cave, and taking their stuff. And I realize as if you replaced cave with farmhouse, there is a massive problem. And there's a massive difference between those two things. That guy in the farmhouse has got cool stuff. I'm going to go in there, kill everybody inside, and I'm going to take everything. That's what gets you dragged back to the keep on the Borderlands and strung up on a yard arm. So there's a definite difference, right? But we are able to compartmentalize that by saying, oh, well, those orcs are evil, and it's okay. And trust me, we definitely did have moments like that when we played D&D as we grew older. I can remember, off the top of my head, I remember I had a random encounter, and this is in my 20s, where they ran into a druid, this gnome druid. And basically this gnome druid said, hey, you are entering this forest, it's under my protection, I'm not letting you in here. And the idea behind the interaction that they were supposed to have was that they were supposed to talk to that person and figure out exactly, why they're not allowed, create an adventure, whatever. And they just killed him. They were like, you can't tell us where to go. And they, and I remember I was just like, that wasn't exactly awesome, so, but I'm around, but then down the road I had their Druid Enclave, figured out, speak with dead type things. They figure out that they were the murderers, and they came back and got their revenge. But, so that was allowed me to have a longer story and a longer, more in-depth thing. Another, this is actually a store-bought adventure. I don't really do these, but Lost City of Baracus, great low-level adventure. Great, like, there's a city in there that's perfect for people to explore. Lots of different plot threads and things to do. Highly recommended. Great stuff. But in the first level of the dungeon, there's like a hermit that just basically went to go live there because he didn't want to live in the city anymore. He didn't like the city anymore. He didn't like being around people. And he has a big steel door that's locked. And the first time my adventurers ever went into there, and he's not like some big high-level wizard or anything. I think he's like a low-level alchemist or something. But he's not like some big high-level adventurer by any means. He is a source of information that people could like go to and, hey, what do you know about this place? But he just wants to be left alone. You know, if they knock on the door, he doesn't answer. He just doesn't, because first of all, one, there's monsters that live in the caves, and he doesn't want to answer the door for them. But two, even if it was an adventure, he doesn't want to deal with them. He just wants to be left alone. But in the times I played that, there are tons of people who are like, well, you know what, this door's locked for a reason, let's bash it down and see what's going on. And they, in a lot of those situations, they've ended up killing that hermit. Even though he's not evil, he just wants to be left alone. And that's also one of those, like, you know, and then people are like, well, if he's living in a cave full of, you know, kobolds and goblins and whatever, you know, stands to reason he's evil. But then again, you know, if you transplant that situation into like a city, you start having problems again. But again, we kind of just skate by it, and we make it okay. We say it's fine, just because it's D&D. And then I'll get to that. Put a pin into it's just a game. We'll come back to that in just a little bit. Hopefully, I'll remember these pins. So the problem here is that I have a few problems with this whole idea that, like, we can't have a race of orcs that are evil. We just can't have a race that's evil. And it seems like orcs are, like, the focal point of this. And I think that's the focal point for, and once again, I'm not trailblazing new ground with my thoughts here. I'm not like, you know, coming down like Moses from the mountain with my words of wisdom or anything like that. But I think one of the problems, for starters, is that we have half-orcs as a race, or you know, half-orcs were a race, one of the first races other than dwarves, elves, halfling, gnomes, that was incorporated into the game as an AD&D as a race. And the problem there is half-orcs, it was like a product of an unholy union. I remember there were all kinds of things like a product of an unholy union between an orc and a human. And we can just elaborate as far as how that happened, and it is a touchy subject. Now, as a younger person, I was just like, okay, fine, whatever. And then I think even in like, I think it was 5th edition where they retconned that, and it was just like kind of like a magical creation. Like half-orcs weren't a product of unwilling mating. It was a like they were like a magical, like maybe it was 4th edition. I don't know, which is fine. It doesn't matter. I remember like having a discussion about that with somebody, and it's like, you know what, if that makes sense, that makes sense. You know, whatever. We'll just move forward with our lives. But I can remember like the old Dragonlance novels. Tanis is a product of his mother, you know, being raped. I apologize for offending anybody. I mean, I realize that we live in a world where these words can kind of be difficult to talk about and what have you. So I'm not trying, but in this is a book I read when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and it was just, and once again, this is a very different world. You know, when I was 10 or 11, it was like the early 80s. So it's a product of a different era, right? But I mean, but I remember reading that and just like, okay, you know, whatever, you know, and I have the luxury of doing that because of who I am and the world that I live in and how I was brought up. And I realized that luxury isn't just for everybody as well. My point here is orcs can be just evil. They can just be evil. There's a reason why we have alignments in the game. Admittedly, I say do away with alignments. I think alignments are silly. But alignments, I think, were a way to just associate certain things with certain global mentalities, if you will. And it also, just by putting them in a slot and just saying these people are bad, made it easier to walk up to them and shove a sword into them. And that's fine. I think that works. That's good. There are tons of other games we play where it is just fine that we beat people up and shoot them and what have you, and we just move on with our lives because it is a digital representation of, you know, whatever. If you play Elder Scrolls games, it's just like, oh, it's a bandit and they're swinging a sword at me. Well, it's fine if I stab them with my dagger 22 times and kill them. Oh, what about that bandit that's sleeping on that bed over there? Well, if I wake him up, he's going to attack me, but I'm going to sneak over to the bed and I'm going to stab him in the back and kill him, you know. And just like, is that problematic? Maybe, probably, but it's a game, right? Anyway, once again, putting a pin in that moving forward. I want to talk about orcs for a while. I think the problem people have, and the reason why orcs are kind of like the center point of this discussion, is one, we're allowed to be half orcs, and you know, and the thing is that, oh, okay, well that kind of humanizes them in some way, right? And because it's a player character playing a half orc, and here's an orc, and so like there's obviously a similarity there. The problem there is that I don't hear a lot of people saying things like, oh, all goblins shouldn't be evil. You know, well, goblins, I guess, in a way, since they're becoming playable races in some cases, definitely more. But like hobgoblins or bugbears or ogres or whatever. And I think one of the problems here is the origination of orc. Now, you know, Tolkien or whatever, there's probably a larger discussion there, and I'll be truthful, I haven't done my deep dive into where orcs have come from, and where orcs come from and who created them can be problematic as well, as far as whether or not the person that created the idea of the orc had some sort of racial bias as well. And again, I'm kind of treating that like plutonium. I'm keeping my hands off of it. But it is very real for creations to kind of disassociate themselves from their creators and become a thing on their own. And so like goblins and ogres and giants and whatever, these things are kind of like, when's the first time anybody mentioned ogres, you know, and where do we go from there? And like, you know, and ogres were always these things that ate children, right? You know, so they're just evil. You know, like Minotaur, you know, is a beast that ate people living inside a maze. You know, we even color code our dragons, which, as an aside, don't color code your dragons. Don't just tell somebody, yeah, that dragon's evil. You know he is because it's white or black or blue or whatever. You know, don't color code your dragons. Just have the players figure out whether or not they're good or bad. But that being said, like, oh, that's a red dragon, it's evil. You know, no, a red dragon is evil. I mean, why is a red dragon evil? Well, is it you know, nature? No, it's just big and powerful and can beat up most of the things that it encounters in its life, and instead of using its power for good, it just says, no, I'm just going to subjugate everything in my little land that I own and run, and I'm not going to I'm not going to listen to what anybody says. But we don't have a problem with that, and I think it's just orcs because once it's where they came from and who kind of originated it, and I think Tolkien is kind of generally thought of as mostly, if not the origination of it, definitely the media that we use to that really brought them to the forefront, you know, as far as, you know, the books we read when we were kids, and of course the cartoon, and then so on and so forth. I mean, if I remember right, I don't even think orcs were in the D&D cartoon. It was always bullywugs, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong, but once again, this being said, you know, we don't care. We don't seem to really be bothered by the idea that all hobgoblins are evil. We're not bothered by the fact that, like, bugbears are evil or ogres or whatever. It's just these orcs. These orcs are what we have to focus on. And the thing is that, going back to my Game of Thrones comment about having a wide-ranging, like, plot. I mean, I like the idea of, like, you know, power behind the throne, you know, maybe the king or queen being mind controlled by you know, some outside force, Lots of different guilds vying for power within a city, and that's all well and good, and that can be a lot of fun for players to dive into and kind of figure out who can we trust, who can't we trust, and a good DM will make that decision up long ways down the road, right? He'll figure out where the players are thinking, and then maybe either go along with the way they're thinking or turn it on its ear. Look back to my illusion of choice video for talk about that. But that being said, again, there's something super satisfying about finding something that's just evil and being able to put it in the ground. And it's a win, right? It is a satisfying win for the players. And now we seem to be playing a lot of D&D that is morally ambiguous and, anti-hero-esque and grimdark and whatever. And we're kind of spinning the tropes that we've been dealing with on its ear. And that can be a lot of fun for people to dive into. But there is something so wonderfully cathartic about being able to just destroy something that is evil. And a recent example would be in my campaign that I'm running right now. And I'm going to name drop here because, my gaming group is my buddy Andrew, my buddy Brad, my buddy Craig, my buddy Jason. These are all people that I've been playing D&D with for years and years and years and years and years. And my buddy Chris Cluey, who is, of course, Chris Cluey, if you know who that is. Google it if you don't know who that is. But anyway, we play online. And Chris's character got into a fight. He has a swords master guy. And he got into a fight with a guy with a big greatsword and his buddy, this guy with these 2 daggers. And right away they're fighting, and the guy with the 2 daggers gets a couple of quick, easy hits because he's attacking from behind, and he's getting some sneak attack or flanking damage or whatever. And immediately I had this moment where I was like, let's just make this guy this the little short little. Whenever you see a movie, there's the big guy that doesn't say much, but then there's the short guy that wants to stay good friends with the big guy because he's oh, that guy's gonna protect me, and he wants to show him. So I was like, hey, I got him, Garg. He just made up a name for him. I got him, Garg. I got him. See, did you see me? See me? I get him. So every single time that guy would stab Chris with his dagger, he'd say, I got him, Garg. I got him. And as the fight went on, Chris got more and more angry and frustrated that this guy was stabbing him with these daggers just over and over again. And then finally Chris got a critical hit on him and killed him. I did enough damage on the little guy to say, yeah, you plunge your sword in his side, and then he falls down to one knee, and then you pull the sword out and you chop his head off and he goes flying. Always use descriptive battle things to make people thing. And then Chris immediately said, I turn to look at the guy with the greatsword. I say, I got him, Garg. I got him. And everybody laughed, and everybody had a great moment, because here is somebody that was just this evil cultist. They were investigating this cult. Here is this evil cultist that was just, in the span of 6 or 7 minutes of game time, had become this annoying little pissant that Chris just absolutely hated. And then he was able to just end it. The guy didn't run away. He didn't become a recurring character or anything like that. I mean, it would have been cool if he had, but that's fine. He didn't. And then he was able to just turn that around and then say that to his buddy. And then I decided, at the spur of the moment, I said he goes into a rage and he just starts attacking you with abandon. And I said and I gave the guy a +2 to hit and a -2 to his armor class because he had been made so angry. And the guy was actually had a high armor class and people were having trouble hitting him. And so then it made it easier for him to be brought down. It made for a fun little dynamic moment. Everybody got really excited, really happy about it. And it was just a wonderful moment. And that was one of these things where here's something that was just incredibly evil. They were bad people. There was no question as to whether or not they were bad or good. And they got to end the combat and kill them and be done. And you can do that not just with orcs, but with anything. And you can make things just flat out evil. Let them, when they get back to the city, let them argue about is this person good or bad? Is, shades of gray this, shades of gray that. Let them argue about that. But when you can, just let this thing, this whatever, whether it's orcs or cultists or skeletons or undead or whatever, just let it be evil and let it be vanquished. Because your players do need a moment of removing themselves from like the drama of real life too, right? I mean, because I would hazard to guess that none of us truthfully know somebody that is just pure evil or pure good. We're all awash in the gray, right? But if you can have something that is perfectly evil. I mean, look at okay, not recently, but look at professional wrestling from like the 80s. You knew when somebody was evil. Look at movies, like the guy that shoots the good guy's dog. I mean, there's nobody you're happier to see be killed in that movie than the guy that's that evil, that just deserves it more than anything. You don't want to hear about how, it's like, what if, okay, taking that example, what if, like, the guy, like, that shoots that guy's dog, what if, like, you found out later, his entire childhood, he was raised by an abusive step-parent that used to sick his dog on him every single day of his life. And now the guy just hates and fears dogs. He had to get older and get tougher. And that's when he sees a dog, he's just filled with revulsion and fear and anger. And like, he can't control himself. And that's why he killed that guy's dog. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, I kind of feel sorry for that guy. Geez, I mean, I'm so glad, I'm so glad he killed the dog, that he got killed, because he killed that dog. But I mean, I guess I can understand, why he, oh man, I don't really like that. Can we go back to where we didn't know that about him? When I could just hate him and I could just be really, really glad when he got shot in the face? Can we go back there? And that's kind of one of those things where it's like, the more you dive into the evil, the reason why things are evil, the more you will get to a point where it's like, it's like the old trope. It's just like, when the villain always has that moment where they go, you and me, we're a lot alike. There's a fantastic Alan Moore story about the Joker, and that, where basically the Joker just had like the worst possible day. Just one day where everything went wrong. Everything went bad. And that's why he became the Joker. And the idea is that, that could happen to anybody. Just the worst possible day. Everything is stripped out of your life. Everything that made you happy is just gone. And you snap. So, but you know that, and then you have empathy. And then empathy can be very good in like real life, but in my idea, that for my escapism, whether it is media, music, playing D&D, playing board games, just sitting down to read a book, sitting down and putting Legos together with my son, just things like that I get a lot of joy out of. I want the ambiguity to be stripped. I don't want to have to think about some larger thing that's going on. And I think one of the problems, and this might be showing my age, and I think one of the problems I have right now with this growing fan base of D&D is that there is an overriding feeling of we need to put our social construct into the game that we play. And that's fine, if that's the way you want to play. And this whole video can be summed up with play the way you want to play and do what you want to do. But this is how I play. I'm okay with putting that social contract in there. But I don't really enjoy playing that game. I don't really enjoy trying to justify my actions when ultimately I just want to go into that cave, beat something up, and take sacks of gold out of it, because that's fun to me. That's fun to do that. It's fun to have those combats and find traps and unlock chests and find secret doors and figure out puzzles and what have you. I don't want to spend 20 minutes trying to decide whether or not we're going to kill this lizard man, because, you know, we can't decide what his true motives are. And I think ultimately, I think that has a lot more to do with when people are saying, comparing old school D&D to what D&D is now. It's just that back when I played the game, that's all it was. It was, hey, we heard there's something going on in the hills. Let's go to the hills. Hey, there's stuff here that needs to be killed. Let's kill it, take the money, and head back to town so we can spend it on magic stuff. And we loved it, and it was fun, and it was cool, and it was enjoyable. And I, as a DM, have learned that when I focus more on this, my players have a lot more fun than if I focus on, let's talk about, you know, the socialism and the class and socioeconomic issues that are going on inside, you know, the city of Bardsgate today. It's just like I can see like the brains turn off in my players as they just move on with their lives and start looking at their phones. Again, if your group loves that, go for it. But I'm telling you right now, one last story. And I think I've told this story before. Before COVID, the summer before COVID, my daughter had a D&D group made up of 5 girls. And I ran the game. And I remember, like, we were playing the first game, and they were all excited. They made their characters. We started playing. And we were going through everything that was going on. And there was, like, and one of the things I learned when you're dealing with a bunch of 11 and 12-year-old girls, you kind of just have to, you know, make the game fit for them. And one of the things they really wanted to do was they all wanted a pet cat. So they all got a pet cat. I think one person had a pet bird. But for most of everybody had a pet cat. They named their cats. They named it what they wanted to. They did their whole thing. They got to the first dungeon. They were like, we're going to go in here and figure out what's going on. Because they got asked to come there and see, because there was some dwarven miners that got trapped or something. And so they said, well, they were like, well, I don't want to bring the cats in there. Something bad's going to happen to them. And then they were like, well, will the cats stay around if we leave them outside? And it's just like, yeah, you've trained the cats to not run off. They'll wait for you. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll leave them outside. And I didn't even think about this. So they go inside, and the dwarven miners are trapped in there. But what they don't know is that there's actually like a group of orcs that would come through the area, and they would check on the mine and see if there was anybody in there. And that's why the dwarven miners were trapped, was because there were these orc raiders that came by and killed a few of the dwarves, and those dwarves kind of blockaded themselves in. So they get in there, they save the 2 dwarves. There's some traps or something in there, if I remember correctly. But on the way out, I realized it says that the orcs come back at the exact same time. So as the players are coming out, the orcs are coming in, they have a battle. And I remember all of a sudden I was just like, as this light bulb went off in my head, and they left their cats outside. So what I did was, I was like, as you're leaving, you hear your cats screaming like they're in pain. And these girls, they ran out. And they said, yeah, you see there's these orcs. Like, one of them is grabbing has 2 of the cats, hold them up by their tails, and the cats are screeching and clawing at them. Another ones are chasing cats down. One cat's, like, up in a tree, and the other one's, like, they're chopping the tree down to get the cat out. And they're like, what? And these girls, see, these 11 and 12-year-old girls, like, I had them. I had them. Like, the action was, like, all of a sudden, the most important, everybody was screaming at me. I was losing them. They were like, yeah, whatever, this isn't very interesting. All of a sudden, their cats were in danger. And they were, like, screaming, like, it's like, we gotta save, you know, and they went one by one, and they killed these orcs And this one friend of my daughter's, this girl named Skyla, she was just like, she's like I don't know, one of them like got held, like somebody had like a wand of paralyzation or something like that, and she said, I walk up to that last one that's paralyzed. I was like, yeah. I walk up to him and I look him in the eye as I slowly put my sword into his stomach. I was just like, oh jeez, you know. But remember, they were like 11 and 12, and this guy, this was the one that was holding up both of the cats by their tails, and they murdered those orcs with just absolute glee, because those orcs were absolutely positively evil, and they deserved to be put down. And when we got together, every single session after that, when we got together, they would talk about how awesome it was that they killed those orcs and how much happiness that got them. So, yeah, and it's okay. It's okay if you're a player and you and you want to play like those 11 and 12-year-old girls. Like, play like an 11 and 12-year-old girl. Take delight and glee in slaying evil. And because it is so tough to find true evil in the world, and you don't know what to do with it when you really find it either, because sometimes it's just like you're just astounded that it's there. But in D&D, it is really easy to find evil, and it is usually pretty easy to deal with. So there you go. Sorry for the long video. Lots of stories in there, lots of stuff going on. It's okay, like I said, it's okay to have evil stuff and have just a blanket evil party in your world. You don't have to, but it's okay to do it. Let me know what you think. Let me know your take on anything I just said. Tell me your stories. Tell me whatever. As always, the more comments, the more thumbs up things I get, the more subscribes and what have you. Hit that little bell thing. Do the thing. I'd appreciate it greatly if you did. I do have some board game videos coming up very, very soon. So if you're here waiting for those, and I do have some RPG reviews coming up very soon as well. So thanks again. Until next time, I'll talk to you later.